Hello, everyone. So excited that you're here today. It has been such a long time since I have gone live, and I cannot wait to talk to you today about all things special education organization. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk to you about all of the different things. Let me see if I can see your questions. Oh, awesome. So if you have questions as we're going through any of this about special education organization, whether that is, special education paperwork, IEPs, data collection, all of that, leave it as a comment. And if it fits within what we're talking about at the moment, I will answer the question. If not, I will answer all questions at the end. But we're going to talk all things special ed. I have so many things to share with you today. So if you see something that you're like, yes, I want to implement this in my classroom, go ahead and click the link it's either above or below this training here. And it'll take you to a category that I have in my Teachers Pay Teacher Shop, and you'll be able to find every single thing that I'm going to show you today linked there. So without further ado, let's get started. Hello, Overflow Manifested. So excited that you're here. All right. This is so cool. Now I can create polls and questions as I go live, and so many things. So the first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to organization, and probably one of the biggest things, is how do you organize all of the data when it comes to student IEPs? Like, what do you do with their data once you collect it? And what about the work samples? And what about all your data sheets? Like, where does all of that go? So I am very much a paper pencil person. So please keep that in mind. Hello, Aubrey. Please keep that in mind when you're listening to this training. Soak it all in like a sponge, but if this isn't the method that works best for you, take what I'm teaching you and adapt it to fit the needs of your classroom and your caseload. So with that being said, I'm very paper pencil. I love me a good binder. I'm looking at 6 different binders sitting in front of me and a clipboard and some empty binders as well, because I love binders, having all of the things. So when it comes to student work and student binders, when I say student binder, it's not the student taking care of this binder. It is me taking care of this binder for them. Now, I'm going to show you how I did this in a self-contained classroom. Hello, Jan. But I have also worked in resource. I've done inclusion. I've co-taught. I've taught just about everything when it comes to the span of special education across multiple states. So I'm going to show you how you can take this idea and mold it or adapt it, accommodate it, modify it for a larger caseload, like if you teach a resource classroom. So student IEP binders. Now, if you have no idea, if you're new here, I love color coding. So this is a sample binder that I do have, excuse me, and this would be what would be included inside of one of my students' IEP binders. So I love these little kidlets from Melon Heads. And so I would find one that looked like each of my students, and then I would put their name on it. And so this would be behind my desk, and I would have one for each of my students. It would have their name on the spine, and it would be color coded. So Stephanie was orange. Let's just say Jeffrey, my husband's name is Jeffrey. Jeffrey was blue. So all of his things in the classroom would be blue. All of Stephanie's things would be orange. And so Stephanie's binder, what is inside of this? This is where I'm keeping all of Stephanie's data, all of Stephanie's progress reports, all of her work samples, all of the things. Hello, Megan. Hello, Karen. And so inside, you're going to see a lot of different things, and I'll go through it slowly. If you want to see something more in depth or have questions about something that you're looking at, just leave a comment and I can share it with you or go into more depth about it. So these are 2 different samples of the progress binder rings. So I call them data binder rings. This is a free resource, these binder rings in my TPT shop. Again, if you use the link, whether it's above or below this video, you can download it. It's a freebie, it's editable. You make it work for you. I'm very much a sticky note data person. And so how these work is each student, again, color coded, their name on the front. There's a beginning date. So when did their IEP start? When does it end? When is it due? That is the cover page. And then each card behind this is for an IEP goal. Hello, Rhonda. And so I will edit this and this is just a sample goal. I will edit this in PowerPoint, and I like to just put like English 1. Now, if it's like a comprehension goal, maybe this one shows it. Let's see. Yep, I did it on this one. So if I look at them this way, and this one's not on a binder ring, it's on a paper clip, you can see where I have English 1, comprehension, English 2 is spelling, English 3 is sight words. I label them like that at the top, so it's easy for me to just do this and fan them out and be like, okay, we're working on spelling, so let me go to that one. So I don't have to flip through all of them. But how it works is I will take data on sticky notes or data sheets or whatever it may be, and I'm transferring it into this document for each of my students. Now, I will typically do this weekly or monthly, or have my paras help me depending upon how much data we have to put into here. And so each of these here at the top is the month of the year, so January, February, March. And depending on your district, every district I've worked for has wanted a different number of data points per marking period. And so this reflects how many data points I would need to have. Now, this was more than what I needed to have. I'm an overachiever by nature, and I always collect a lot of data, so I wanted to make sure I had enough spots for all of it. But you can edit this when you download it. And so I put a star when the IEP is starting, so that way I know that this IEP is coming due in August. I also, like the first 3 weeks of August when I taught, in some districts, it depends on if you're in the north or the south. Like the south goes back early August. The kids here in Florida go back August 10th. But I know my nieces and nephews up home in Pennsylvania, they go back like the end of August or after Labor Day. So really depends. But I'll put an X if we have no school that week, or if we're off for winter break. So there will be one here like the last 2 weeks of December, or for Thanksgiving, I'll put an X in that week, or spring break, I'll put an X. So I put X's or just scribble out that box to show that we didn't have school that week, so there's no data. Once I've taken the data, regardless of how I'm taking it, I will throw that percentage or that fraction into here. And then when I go to do progress reports, all I need is this. This is all that I need to put my progress reporting data in. I don't need my binder. I don't need any of the binders. I don't need anything else. Everything that I have is here. I also will put extra notes on the back of a card if there's a specific sticky note that I used for an activity that the student did really well or didn't do so well, or it's a great piece of data. I'll stick it on the back of here. I do keep all of my sticky notes on the back of like a weekly lesson sheet. But you can see here, these are, so the goal was, will ID rhyming pairs by sorting pictures. So you can see this was just an example of like what we worked on, but those are not rhyming pairs. So it's not a good example. But anyway, I keep this inside of the student's binder. If the student is using a grading rubric for any purpose, if they are on an alternative grading system or whatever it may be, that needs to be attached to the child's IEP. But also I will keep it in their binder. So here is this participation rubric, and this is also my weekly progress monitoring. So I will put, you can see here I have a sticky note on the back of this one that has data. Now, all of my weekly lesson plan progress monitoring things will go into a file folder that goes in a filing cabinet. What else is in this student IEP binder is I use the plastic sleeve covers, and we have a section for goals and objectives. We have a section for progress reports, and then we have a section for each marking period. What I love about these plastic sleeves is I don't have to hole punch anything. I can stick work samples down in the plastic sleeve, and I know exactly when they're coming from, because period 1, here's all marking periods 1 work samples. Period 2, here's all of marking period 2 samples. 3 and 4, and then there's a notes section at the end. Maybe I had some notes from home or whatever it may be that I need to keep. So all of the students' information that I need as the teacher, or that my paras may need, or that any individual working with that child may need in relation to that child's IEP are going to be in this document. So I'll put a copy of the child's goals and objectives here. I will hole punch that and put that in. Every marking period with their progress reports, I will throw that in here. And then again, like I said, all of their work samples are going to be thrown in here. Now, one of the biggest questions I get is, how do you choose what work samples to keep? How do you choose what work samples to send home? I love sending student work home. Honestly, I maybe don't keep as much as I should, but I have the data for the work samples that I do send home. I will keep work samples that show a really good data point, or data points that are outliers that I'm seeing frequently. Why do I send all of this data home? Why do I send so many work samples home? Because I want parents to see how their child is doing, right? I want parents to know very well when we have a parent-teacher conference, or if they call me with questions, or if they come in for an amendment IEP, or they request a meeting, or they have an IEP meeting. They know where their child is without having to see those progress notes, right? They know when they get that progress report just about where their child's going to be, because they've seen all of this work that their child has been doing. So that's why I send so much of the student work home. I will just keep a few here and there, probably 20 or less pieces per marking period that I'll throw in there. Hello, Megan. Hello, Leslie. Leslie asked, where can I find that progress monitoring form you're using? You can find it. There's a link. I don't know if it's above or below this video. It'll take you to a category on TPT, and you'll find it linked in there. Megan said, I keep too many samples in my binder rather than sending them home. This is my problem. I did that at the beginning. I kept way too many work samples, and I would have a folder that was like 3 inches thick at the end of the year. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with all of this now? Like, do I send it up to the next teacher? Do I keep it for this year? Do I send it home? Like, I want to throw it away. So that's when I was just like, I'm just going to start sending most of it home, because I want the parents to see this, right? I want the parents to see how well their student is doing, or if their child is regressing or not making progress. I also want them to see that. I don't want anything to be a surprise when we have a conversation or a meeting or get progress reports. Like, I want them to be very fully aware of what's going on in the classroom without us having to have a conversation all the time. Our SDI is included in each student's binder. As a pair, I'd find this helpful. You could certainly add that in there, yes, with the goals and objectives section. So I'll show you the student snapshots as well. So let's actually move into that. So when it comes, what you did not see in the student IEP binder was any data sheets that student uses or that I used for that student. You didn't see any IEP snapshots or IEP student profiles. All of that is kept in my caseload IEP binder. And what that looks like is this. Again, it is linked. There's a bunch of different covers and all of the things, but this IEP binder is where I keep all of my caseload information for me, or for my paras or whoever's working with this, if they need to come in and find something about a student, or if I have a sub coming in for a couple of days, I can pull all of my IEP snapshots, so they have all of that. So this just has like acronyms, but then there's the school contact information. So all of us, each child IEP team is going to be different, right? There's different individuals. But I like to keep a master caseload list or school contact info list for just the school in general. So if I have a new student come in and they need, a certain person, or they're in a grade level, I have all of that information here, and I already know who to email. I don't need to hunt that email down or that phone number. It's already in my binder. And then maybe I can turn this page. From here, the next page was just IEP team information, and it's not going to let me pull it. But we have grade team contact information. It then goes into my master caseload list. So this is where I will keep a list of each of my students, grade, age, homeroom, disability, due dates, other services that they receive. Again, just a quick glance, like a master caseload IEP at a glance. And then we have student info. So I have student profile sheets, which you can use these ones, or a lot of times the system that your school uses for like attendance and keeping track of like who's in what grade and all of that stuff will be in the system anyway, the school system. So you could just print the profile sheet from there. Or a lot of IEP writing systems will be able to provide you with a quick IEP at a glance. Some of them cannot, or maybe it's not user friendly or doesn't include everything you want. So then I will create my own IEP at a glance, and I will keep each student's in my binder. It's easy for me to grab. I just pull the tab open, and I can grab all of these out, stick them in my sub binder if I need to, or if someone needs to come look at something specific or I need to change them out, I can quickly pull out my binder, go through, find the students, update them on the computer, print them out, put them back in this binder. I also keep calendars in here, so tracking calendars to make sure the beginning of every school year, this is probably the biggest piece of advice I have for the beginning of the school year. Go through all of your IEPs and write down either on a calendar, in your planner, on your Google Calendar, whatever it may be. I love this because it's just one sheet. When is each student's IEP due? Do we have any reevaluations coming up? And I put them all on here so that I know that they're coming up. And there's a lot of different calendars that are included in each of these IEP binders. So you can see there's like a 1 page, but then there's also like the double page. I just like the 1 page, and then I use a regular planner for everything else. There's a parent communication log. I don't keep this in here. I have it in this one just to show you that it's included. I'm going to show you my parent communication binder though here in a second, which is a free resource. What to do before, during, and after the IEP meeting. All of my friendly reminders for parents that I send home. Then I have teacher reports, my parent questionnaires, requests for assistance. This is where it gets into all the different data sheets. So I have data sheets for transition, 504, different notes pages, goals, progress monitoring for different topics, behavior data sheets. this is where all of my original sources of data sheets are going to be kept in here. Where do I keep the data sheets that I know that I'm using so that I don't have to go through this big binder, through a big tab, and search for everything at once? Now, this is not, this is just something that I came up with that works for me. I made this cute cover. I didn't have a cover on it when I was in the traditional classroom setting. You can see I just wrote like original. I was like, I know that this is the binder that I have to pull. It's the orange binder with nothing in it. So what I do is, again, with the binder page sleeves, each document, each data sheet, whatever it may be, whatever its use is for, if I am using it daily, weekly, or monthly, I am keeping it in this binder. I will have an original copy in my caseload binder, but I have a copy in here with multiple copies inside of each sleeve. So if I know that I need a chart, we're just tracking a monthly chart for something, I know that I can grab this original files binder, just go and pull one. All I have to do is take it out, and there's one ready for next time. My paras know that they can go, if they need another chart for the bathroom or they need another inclusion chart, they can go grab one out of this chart or out of this binder if they need it. They also know if there's one left, it's going to have a sticky note that says, do not take, please make copies. They know to take this out of the binder, put it on my desk, and then I will go make copies for it. My paras are not copy mates for me. So this is where I keep all of my data sheets. So we have a daily toileting data sheet. Here's that weekly progress form. This is included in the data sheets bundle. If this is the one that you were looking for, Leslie, this is included in there. If you're looking for the binder rings, they're free. You can download that, the link that's in the video text. Following simple commands, my daily prompt tallies, and then we have a weekly behavior tracker. So you can see some of these are printed on colored paper, a behavior plan, a student incident report, word progress, inclusion data, special services log sheet. So I saw that Overflow manifested asks, are there service delivery logs? Special services log sheet is what I do, and I don't have the folder with me. I didn't grab it. But what I do is I will copy a bunch of this sheet, and this is a free resource as well, just this specific sheet in the link that I provided for you. And it has a cover sheet, and basically it goes on a clipboard, and it'll look something like this, and it'll just say, it actually looks something like this, but it won't be the inclusion documentation form. It'll just say services login. And so underneath the cover sheet or in I have often also laminated a file folder and put the cover sheet on the file folder, laminated it, and then I will put a binder clip inside with a pen, and all of the service logs will be in there, and it's at the front of the room. So when they come in and when they leave, they know they can time in and time out and then sign their name. That's how I keep track of special services log sheet. Now, for why do I do this? I didn't do this for the longest time. And then when I taught in a self-contained setting, the district came to me and said, we've heard notice from one of the service, about one of the service providers across multiple students, not just in my classroom, that a service provider that we contract out has not been coming. And I was like, well, yeah, I haven't seen that person in a while either. So they asked me to start doing this. And it was truly a game changer. I didn't have any pushback from anyone else. It also helped me make sure that all of my students were getting all of their minutes, whether it was each day, each week, each month, each marking period. However I looked at it, I could say, okay, well, Stephanie's supposed to get this many minutes per marking period of speech or of adapted PE, and this month she only got this many. So we have so many that we need to make up next marking period or within the next month before the marking period is up. Excuse me. So this service log sheet is free, again, at the link. And that's how I keep track of service logs. And again, I've never had any pushback. I've just put it in terms of we're keeping track to make sure that the student gets all the services per the IEP. And I honestly have never had any pushback from it. So we have an observation form that's in here as well, different teacher report forms that I keep in the back just in case. But this is where all of the data sheets that I am using for all of my students, or any type of data sheet that I'm using, or piece of paper to keep track of something, is in this original binder, and everyone knows to go grab it. Don't use the last one if it has a sticky note on it, because we need to make copies. But that is the easiest way that I found for me. I have trust issues with technology. Again, I'm very paper pencil. I don't want to have to rely on the printer having ink or the computer working, or me remembering a password is probably the biggest thing to log into my Google Drive or whatever it may be, or forgetting a USB drive that page is on. So I just like having a hard copy, go to the copier, make a copy, and everything is good in the world. The other thing that I did mention to you, and I didn't show you the resource binder, so we'll go back to that. The one thing I did mention was the parent contact binder, and this is also a free resource at the link, again, above or below this video. And so this is free, this binder, and I update it every year with the year, so I do need to update it. So if you download it and see the year is not correct, I will get it. I will work on it right after this. But this is how I keep track of parent communication, whatever it may be. Again, color-coded. These are actually file folder pieces, and you can use construction paper as well, but I just color-coded each section. And so this is the parent contact log. It's really simple. I print these pages front back. I have a couple in here. Whenever I talk to a parent, I do date, time, what method of communication was it, what were we talking about, what were the concerns, and then what are the next steps? Like, what do I need to do now? If there's nothing that I need to do now, that's great. I'll just put NA or nothing at this time. But if there's something that I need to do, if I personally, me, myself, as an individual, as a human, if I don't write it down, I promise you it's not getting done because I will forget. And as teachers, I feel like a lot of you are probably the same. Like, we have so much on our plate. There's so much to do all of the time. If certain things don't get written down, we're going to forget. So it's just a great way for me, as soon as I've talked to this parent, fill this out, and I have everyone's in here that I need. If I need to at any time for whatever reason it may be, grab this parent communication, I can quickly go and I can just grab the pages from Jeffrey again was blue, so I'm going to just go grab Jeffrey's papers and I have it ready to go at any minute. So I like to do it this way. Again, I love binders. This is a free resource, the binder cover with the spine and the sheets inside. So you can grab that at the link above or below. Going back to the student IEP binder, if you have larger caseloads or you don't have room for, let's say your caseload is like 20 students and you don't have room for 20 binders, or even if you have 12 students in a life skills or self-contained classroom, you don't have shelf room for 12 binders, what I recommend is getting a larger binder, right? And just putting them all in here and separating your students out by, again, color coding them and using these sheet protectors here. So if you have a larger caseload and you're looking for enough colors to be able to cover multiple students, Astro Brights has a 25 pack of paper, and so that's what I used for this here. So you can see there's multiple colors. The one thing that I do get a lot of questions about is, like, I only have 6 colors for my students. So we have red, blue, green, yellow, orange, and purple. And so I'll double up on colors if I have more than that. So I've had a caseload in life skills. We had eight students one year, I think. So I doubled up on colors. You put their names on it. It's a great thing for them to be able to recognize their name on something, and they always knew. So if you're looking for more colors, use white or black binders or whatever color binders you want to use, and then use colored paper to differentiate bins. You can get just white bins or black bins or gray bins anywhere, and then you can print name tags and color coding things and shapes, or however you're going to use it to differentiate different things. You can use colored paper to print on it and make all of the different things. So you definitely have that option for larger caseloads. Let me look through the questions real quick, and then I have 2 more things to show you. And then again, if you have any questions, please throw them in the comments. So Megan asked, all the completed data charts you do, then just go in the folder in the filing cabinet and skip right past the student binder. The only thing that goes in my folder for weekly progress monitoring is this page, and I just have it in here as a sample because this is the one that I always grab, the binder. This is the only thing that goes in the file folder that skips past student binders, because I have all of my students on one sheet, so I don't want to keep it in one student specific folder. I put it in that sample folder so that I have it to share. This does not go in any student specific folder, again, because it has multiple students on it. When I had more than this many students, I did front back. And so basically what I did was each day, you can see, like, I had Stephanie, and I would write the activity that we did, and then I would write, this is for fraction or the data that we had. So this day we worked on sight words, check. And maybe I didn't take data, but that's what we worked on. So this not only tracks like what I'm teaching my students each week, but also tracks data at the same time. So I'm able to pull these if I'm ever questions about progress monitoring, or if a teacher or another teacher or a parent ever wants to know, like, what have you been working on? I can easily pull this and be like, well, on this week, here's everything that we worked on with Stephanie, and here's how she did. And then I can pull the next week and say, here's what we've been working on. This is what worked for me. I hate writing lesson plans. I'm not going to lie to you. Lesson plans are not my thing. So my lesson plans, when I had to submit them, and I've never been fortunate enough to not have to submit lesson plans at any school that I've worked in any classroom setting. I've always had to submit lesson plans. They were just very generic, and they would say, okay, we're going to work on this and we're going to read this book. And so when I would do this sheet, I would be more specific with what data we took, what specifically did we do, how did the student do, all of that good stuff. And then if there were any sticky notes from data that go with this specific week, I would put them on the back of the sheet, even if there was stuff on the back, so that I always keep the data sheet sticky notes so that I have them to look back on. So Megan says, any individual data sheets would go in the student binder then. Do you put in the goals section or behind the marking period? Yes. So if we have specific data sheets for students that, like, maybe we're tracking a behavior and it's frequency data, I will throw that in their student binder. I will typically put that in the marking period. I will hole punch it and throw it in there and keep it in like the sequential order of each week or each day or however we're doing it. Sometimes parents wanted that data, so I would make a copy and send it home, but I would keep those data sheets and put them in their student binder. Yes. So the only one that's staying with me in a file folder in a filing cabinet is the weekly progress monitoring that follows my lesson plans. All the other data sheets, if they're individual student data sheets, they'll go in their specific student IEP binder. If they're grouped, where it's like a bunch of students on one, they're probably going in a file folder. I'm going to label it and I'll be able to look back through it. Let me look at the other questions that we have. Jordan said, I also have an issue with keeping track of the service log. It's awesome. Yes, I love that. It's so simple to do. Again, you can put it on a clipboard. Just make sure you have like a confidential, and you can just make one in PowerPoint or in Canva. If you have a Canva account, Canva's free for teachers. Just make sure you have like something on the top that shows that it's confidential, so that if anybody walking in can't just look and see student names or whatever. And then I just laminate it and stick it on the top. But make sure that you do that. Leslie asked if the forms are editable. All of the data sheets that you see in my IEP binder, this one as well, the binder rings, those are editable. Yes, they are. The parent contact binder sheet is not editable. That's a free download. You just print it and it's ready to use. Leslie said, can you clarify, do you use one sheet per student? One sheet of what? How do you use one sheet per student? Clarifying question. Can you elaborate more on that, and then I can answer? Jan said, how and what do you transition info into main files? So again, my system wasn't super perfect. I had two, like the clear Sterilite bins, or you can get like the stacking like file bins that people have, like all the offices have and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, if I have work samples, like student work samples that I know I'm going to keep, I would throw it, like we would have a kidney bean table or be behind my desk, or I would just have a pile on the table. At the end of every day or the end of every week, we would just go and sort those pages into either the binders, or they would sort them into those piles. So there'd be two piles. So we would have like a data sheet pile, and then we would have the work sample pile. And so if I was working with students at the table, I could quickly be like, okay, pretend this is an activity they did. I'm going to keep this, put it in there, turn around, let's keep going. So then either myself or one of my paraprofessionals could go back at any point, and I usually do it like once a month, not going to lie. Once a month, go through that stack of papers behind me, and I would sort them into student binders and where they needed to be for more organization. So that's what worked for me. Again, it's whatever works best for you. It was just easiest for me to do it that way, and it wasn't too much. It wasn't too cumbersome. Overflow Manifested asked, do you use a specific lesson planning template? I don't. we actually have, so I'm doing a lesson planner review every back to school season. I purchase with my own money a bunch of different lesson planners based off of your recommendations, special education teacher recommendations that you've heard have worked well. And so I will purchase them. I have purchased 10 of them with my own money. I'm waiting for the last 2 or 3 to come in, and we'll be doing another event here inside of the Facebook group. It is under the events tab if you want to go and see that event, and I will show all of the different lesson planners that are out there. And then I will explain like how I would use them in different settings. And so you get to see them before you make a decision which one to purchase. So I personally don't have a specific lesson planning template. I truly just like, and I don't have it, I was just printing out a lesson plan template actually, but I don't have one in front of me. I just like blank boxes like this. So like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then like, so the days that go like this. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then like ELA math. I just like boxes because I'm just putting very generic things in because I'm coming back and putting everything on this. So I personally don't have a specific lesson planning template, but definitely come to the lesson planner review that we're doing because I bought a lot this year. Usually I only buy 3 or 4. I think last year I bought 5 lesson planners. This year I bought 10. So I'm excited to see all of them. All right, Leslie said, can you clarify, do you use one sheet per student for the goal sheet? The goal sheet, yes. So if I have an IEP goal sheet, let me pull one out of this IEP caseload binder. So if I have a student working on a specific IEP goal, and I'm just going to pull the first one that I find. That makes sense without having a goal attached to it. So let's say, okay, letter identification. If I'm working with a student who has a goal on this, I'm only having 1 page per student. I'm not going to do multiple data points for multiple students on one of these. This will be for an individual student. That is my personal preference. However, for data sheets, I really only use data sheets for non-academic things. So like behaviors, anything else that I'm tracking, unless I'm requested to have a specific tracking sheet or data sheet, either by the IEP team or the district is saying I need to use a specific data sheet for tracking letter recognition, then I will use a data sheet. Other than that, I'm using a sticky note, and I showed you very briefly how I do that. So that's how I use the goal sheets. Emily said, where can I get the progress monitoring data sheet? So this is included in the endless bundle of data sheets that's linked, again, above or below this video. I'm not sure where it's showing up. Megan said to tag onto the transitioning into the main file question. Okay, so you have your sheets. Mine are sorted into 2 different bins. That's where we left off. When my kids leave me to go to the next class, we need to transition all files. We're told we aren't supposed to shred data, et cetera. It needs to stay with them for a certain number of years. Yes. So in my past district, we had to keep student files for 5 years. Yes, so I understand. Do you keep everything each year in a main file at the end of the year? Do you get rid of it or some since you track percentages? How do you organize this? I just had to send 5 years worth of files to the next teacher for 4 kids. It was a ton of files, and I felt terrible that I was not organized enough. So I do the same thing. At the end of the year, everything that was in this student's binder, I take out, and it goes in a file folder. And it's usually, especially when you teach in a self-contained setting, you have kids for multiple years, depending on what your classroom setting is or how many grade levels you teach. So when I taught self-contained, I taught grades 1 through 4. So I had 4 grade levels. And so I would have students for 4 years if they started with me in 1st grade, or they may only be with me for 3rd and 4th because of when I started and all of that. But I would just at the end of the year take all of their stuff out of their binder and throw it into a file folder, and then that file folder would go with them to the next year. I would try to binder clip each year because I don't keep that many work samples. I keep enough, but not too many as to where it's not going to fit in a file folder. These are never overflowing for me personally at the end of the year. Again, because I like to send home all of this data to parents. I want them to see it. So I'll try to take a binder clip and just clip 1 year and put a sticky note on the front. I love sticky notes, guys, if you can't tell already. I'll binder clip all of 1 year's things and just put 2022, 2023 school year on that sticky note, and then I'll keep it all in that file folder. And when that student moves up, it goes with them. Their morning binders will also move up with them, or if they move to a new school in the district. If not, then I will take their morning binders and we'll reuse them for other students. Does that make sense? It's not like my organization system, and I will say, I will throw myself under the bus, never anyone else, is not the Pinterest perfect system, but it is what works for me. And that is how I have found to keep my sanity as a teacher and as a human being, was to just, this is how I keep everything organized. And one year it might work for me, and one year it might not. And one year I might have a para who can help me do a bunch of different things. And then the next year it might really fall back on me a lot more. So it really just depends on your caseload, the adults that you have helping you in your classroom, if you have any. If you have planning time, I know some teachers don't get a planning time, how much time you have at the beginning and the end of the day, if you have additional time, or if you come in a little early. So it really depends on how strategic you are with planning out your time. You can make it work, but you have to be strategic with how you're using your time when you're at school. Jan said, how do you organize for students who come and go from the school and class? Do you mean for students that like go to inclusion, or go like maybe you only see them for math and English, like as a resource teacher? How do you organize all of that information? Is that your question, Jan? For when I taught self-contained, my students would go out for what they called inclusion, but it was mainstreaming. They went out for mainstreaming and for science and social studies and specials. And so we needed to keep track of their service minutes and what they were learning in that classroom. And so what they would do is the para that went with them, if they went with a paraprofessional to the general education classroom. If they did not, the general education teacher had copies of this data sheet. If not, they went with a color-coded, just like this, a color-coded binder or a color-coded file folder. This is not a file folder. This is definitely a clipboard, a color-coded clipboard. They would go with a color-coded clipboard, and their data sheet would be here underneath the confidential top. And so again, these data sheets, you saw the example in my copies folder, my copies binder. I didn't print this one front back though. But I would print this sheet front back, and this is just for inclusion service documentation. And each week they would have their own sheet. So one sheet, one student, 1 week. This is how this worked. And I would make sure that each student's sheet would have their specific accommodations. So it was as simple as a check mark for my para, for the general education teacher. And so they would mark what time they came in, what time they left, what did we work on, what supports were provided, check off the different accommodations. And then on the back, are there any comments, like anything else that we need to know about this? So it was just a very general keeping track of what services were provided. Did they use the accommodations? This is also great data to use, especially for accommodation modification data, when you go to choosing your supports and services in the next annual IEP, or for progress reporting. So you have all of that as well. So that's how we kept track of services provided in the general education classroom for students who were in my classroom, my self-contained classroom. So that's how we did that. When it comes to like teaching a resource, what I have done for my students is, for resource, when I taught resource, so I've taught resource in a charter school. I've also co-taught resource where I would push into the classroom. So in the instance where students would push, I would push into the classroom and I would service students and support them in the general education classroom. They would keep all of their things in that classroom. I would keep all of my things either, on a bookshelf in that classroom, or I would keep them in a binder that I would keep with me in a bag that came with me, or I would, just in general somehow organize my things so that I didn't have a lot of cumbersome things to take with me, but that I had that with me at any time or at any point that I needed. Now, for students that I came to like a resource classroom, we would have their binders. They would each have, and when I taught in the charter school, they each actually had their own folders and their own desk in the classroom. And so they would have specific IEP work in their folders when they came to my classroom for resource. And we did centers a lot. And then on Fridays, we would do IEP work. And so it just really depended on the dynamic of what that looked like for my caseload, what that looked like for that school year, and what that collaboration looked like between me and that general education teacher. Megan said, yes, so I started in an ABA room and transitioned to an MD room. They want more thorough data sheets, so daily data sheets were like 3 pages each day. 3 pages each day. And then we graphed percentages, and we're told to keep the paper that we tracked. So it's just so much. Megan, unless you're very much a paper pencil person like me, I would try digital data collection and see if you can do those 3 data sheets each day in a Google form, and then it will graph the data for you. Like, that might be something that is just super easy for you to keep track of. But yeah, I would ask the purpose in a nice way, the purpose of having all of these data sheets. Like, what are we keeping them for? Just like clarifying question, what is the purpose of this? Why are we tracking this? I just want to know so that I make sure I collect the correct data. I would frame it in that way. Jan said DCYF, transitions for residences and school districts. I've heard of DCYF. What does the acronym stand for? DCYF. Students who come and go from school and class. So students who go out to different residence and school districts. Same as how it really depends on. I've never had students who left the school day to go to a residence, or I have had students on homebound. And so it really depended on the situation and what IEP goals we're working on, what we were tracking, what data I needed to have, how that looked like. It was really like a hybrid model of a bunch of different things. Jordan said, so as a high school self-contained teacher who teaches several subjects, I separate the work samples into subject areas and paperclip them in the file folder. I do this at the end of each quarter. I have 25 plus students on my caseload every year, and I have an alphabetical binder that includes their IEP snapshots, schedules, level of supports, and if I'm doing consult logs with their due dates. I love that. Having one, I love that it's in alphabetical order. I love that even more than color coding, honestly, because that makes it so simple, especially for those larger caseloads. I think paper clipping the academic areas or the areas that you're working on is absolutely amazing. I think that's fantastic. So it sounds like what you're doing is working, and I love it. Like, I'm totally here for it. That's fantastic. Jan said, I do push-ins and use a color-coded clipboard box. Ooh, what's a clipboard box? Is that like a clipboard that you can open up and it has stuff inside? Those are really fun. Foster home placements. So Jan, are you servicing students in their homes? Are you doing in-home services then, like through the school district as the teacher? Is that how that's working for you? Just asking clarifying questions so I can try and help with that. The other thing that I wanted to share with you when it comes to organization was one thing that I didn't show yet, and it is all of my IEP paperwork. So having my IEP caseload binder, that is just IEP caseload stuff, IEP snapshots, and originals of data sheets that are organized. Student binders are work samples, student IEPs, all of that good stuff. Parent contact binder is just how often I'm contacting parents. My copies is just copies of things that I'm using very, very frequently, so I can just pull one and go, and I don't have to worry about making copies all of the time. The inclusion services is just making sure that my students are getting their service minutes, they're using their accommodations modifications in that setting. And then what else did I show you? We're talking about the service logs. So the service logs is making sure that related services people are showing up, working with the students, and for how long, and making sure they're getting all their service minutes. So that leaves out a really huge part of special education, and that's writing the next IEP, right? So I have another binder that is what I call my IEP toolkit. And so this is where I keep all of the documents that I need for when it comes to writing that child's next IEP. So what you'll see in here is, this is just a different version of the scheduling log, but this is similar to the master IEP caseload, one that you saw in my binder, but this is the scheduling log. So I have a student name, their due date. When it comes to scheduling their meeting, when did I send those 3 letters? There's 3 attempts, dates I call, the meeting date, when is that? When is the draft IEP due? When did I send it? When did I send home the finalized IEP after the meeting? And the date that I provided that copy of that new IEP to the teachers. This just helps keep me organized. Some school districts may provide some type of data sheet like this for you, or make you do something separate, but that was just really for me to make sure that I was doing everything I needed. You saw a different version of the IEP calendar in my caseload binder, a different version of this checklist in there. And then we have our IEP meeting timeline, which is not linked, so I'll go back and edit the text so you can grab this free IEP meeting timeline. It's actually the IEP writing timeline, and it tells you when to do all of the different things when it comes to IEP meetings. But this binder is where I'm keeping all of my general ed teacher questionnaires. This is where I'm keeping my parent questionnaires, my input forms, my student questionnaires, My para questionnaires. This is where I'm keeping all of that. This is where I'm keeping, this is to inform you that your annual IEP is coming up. It's due on this date. What days work for you? I will keep, just like my copies binder, I will keep multiple copies of the same thing in here so I can just grab and go. Here's my meeting agendas. So I will keep them in here. So you have your initial, your annual, and then I think there's one in the middle. IEP meeting ground rules, meeting reminders to send home with students, a reminder to have at IEP meetings, my IEP meeting notes, a list of just general modifications and accommodations. So anything that I'm really going to need when it comes to having an IEP meeting and planning that next child's IEP is going to be in the IEP toolkit. As I go to write the IEP, that's when I'm going to go grab that student IEP binder, and I'm going to pull all that data out of there, look at those work samples, put that into the present levels, and then go into, once the present levels are written, because I've sent out those gen ed forms, I've sent out the parent teacher, the parent forms, the para forms, all of that are in my IEP toolkit. I take all of that data and then I will put that into the present levels, which then will guide me into the IEP goals and further on and further on. So that is where I keep all of like my IEP writing things. It has its own binder. Everything I need is in there. The paper, the plastic sleeves in the binders are like my best friend because you can keep multiple copies. You don't have to worry about running out of copies. I'll typically make like 30 or 40 copies of a page at the beginning of the year and just put them in there. And so that I know that I have at least enough to get me through half the year, if not more. So that is how I manage all of the IEP paperwork when it comes to writing a new IEP. Back to Jan, so foster home placement. So in school, but I have multiple foster homes moving them in and out of school, so they transition schools. Last year I had 5 kids come and go from schools multiple times. I'm in a school, so they're then in and out. Okay, so their files were in school and then sent to the next, then back and so on. So in that instance, when students, it's different than a student transferring schools because these children are transferring schools multiple times, right, as they move through foster care, unfortunately. And so, but it's similar in the fact that when a student moves to school, you send all of that paperwork with to that next school. And how I would collect paperwork and what I would keep and how I would store it. Like at the end of the year, I take everything out of the student IEP binder clip it, put a school year sticky note on it. How I would keep that data wouldn't change. I would just forward it on. And then if I eventually got it back, I would continue on with the same system for me. If you wanted to put something in that folder that you're sending on with like an explanation of how you collected data or anything, or maybe your contact information if the next teacher wanted to reach out to you, you could certainly do that. But I personally, for me, if it were me in that situation, I wouldn't change the way that I was doing anything because I'm still keeping the same data when the student is in my class. I'm not collecting extra data. I'm keeping that IEP data, those work samples. It's not going to change. So my system wouldn't change for that, if that makes sense. Any other questions that we may have? Again, I'll go back and link the IEP toolkit and then the free IEP writing timeline that we have. I didn't link it before, but everything else that you've seen is included in the link that's already in the description here. I hope that this was helpful for you. Again, like I said at the beginning, when it comes to staying organized in special education, it really comes down to doing what's best for you and your students and your caseload for that specific school year. You may have to change it every year. You may have to change it every couple of years. And what you do may look very different than what I do, may look very different than what Jan does, may look very different than what Jordan does, might look very different from what Megan does, right? So all of us are going to do things a certain different way, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's completely okay. So I just want to thank you all for being here and learning all of this, taking it all in, maybe learning a new method or two, and really, especially over summer, because it is summertime. Thank you for being here, learning more, being here for your students and showing up, but also thank you for learning all of this and adapting it to fit the best needs of your classroom and your students. I have really enjoyed being here. Thank you for being a VIP in the Facebook group here at Mrs. D's VIPs. I'm so glad that you're here. If you ever need anything, please reach out. We have over 30,000 special education teachers and educators in our group that are here to help you at the drop of a hat. All you have to do is ask the question, If you need to ask an anonymous question, you can certainly do that as well. Just send me a message and say, I have an anonymous question to ask, and I will ask it for you. No problem there. And then you can reach out to me if you have any additional questions or anything that you need, or maybe a specific question that you'd like help with. I am always here for you. And don't forget that here in a couple of weeks, we have our 2023-2024 lesson planner review for special education teachers on July 11th. So that will also be here in the group, and I will see y'all then. Have a good rest of your day.